Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our CAWASA Wednesday webinar. I'm Ignatius Jean, the Executive Director at the Caribbean Water and Sewage Association. And we're happy to have all of you on. Those of you who are on with us, it means that you are not a big football fan. Today we have a special guest who I'm going to introduce to you now. She is the newest addition to the board of directors of the Angeles Chapter Foundation. She's a longtime environmentalist and animal lover and hails from the multicultural Caribbean. And I won't tell you what part just yet. She has been the longtime chair of the highly successful Angeles Chapter Water Committee. She co-chairs the Sierra Club California Water Committee and is the vice chair of the Environmental Social Justice Committee working on social justice and Native Indian issues. She has served on the Grants Committee, Communications Committee, and Executive Committees, while continuing to serve on the Outings Management Committee and Conservation Committee. She is presently the Director of Outreach, Environmental, Community, and Tribal Affairs for the Ocean Well Water in California. And she is going to speak on the topic Constituents of Emerging Concern, Microplastics. And the beautiful lady you see on the screen here, she is charming Evelyn. And she hails from the same Caribbean spot as me. And you will pick it up on her accent. So over to you, Charming. And thank you so much for making the time out for us. Really appreciated that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Jha. As Mr. Jha said, my name is Charming Evelyn, and I hold many, many titles within Sierra Club. And so, with that, you know, Mr. Jha and I did a panel while I was in St. Lucia on water, and I brought up microplastics. So, I think we thought it would be a good topic for today. And all of you are in water and sewage. So this is a constituent of emerging concern. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm in California, where it is only about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So big time difference for me. So everyone is probably wondering, what is Sierra Club? Who is Sierra Club? And so I will give you my elevator speech. Sierra Club is the oldest and largest environmental organization in the USA, established in 1892. So it's over 130 years old, responsible for the national park system that we have now. If you ever visit the United States and you go to a national park like Yosemite or Grand Stairs Escalante. Sierra Club was responsible for that. We're responsible for the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, lowering car emissions because of the smog and the effect that it has on people. These are all things that Sierra Club has done over its history. And our mission statement is to explore, enjoy, and protect. And that means doing all of that for people, the environment, and creatures, and for animals. And so you can read what this is, and you're probably wondering, how did a Caribbean girl get involved with Sierra Club? So I'll just tell you that I went to the University of Guyana in South America. Hopefully, there are some GTs on there. So big up to UG. I went to UG. And when I got back to St. Lucia, I'm a very avid reader, and I received a magazine called Sierra. And I read that magazine from cover to cover. And in reading it, I realized, you know what? Yes, my degree is in pharmacy, but this is what I want to do. I am an environmentalist at heart. If we grew up in the Caribbean, um, we know to reuse everything. We know to conserve electricity, to conserve water. When a hurricane hits, you need all of these things. And so for me, this is part of my roots, my root system. And so I read that magazine and I thought I have to be involved with Sierra Club because they are speaking my language. And once I moved to the US, I got in touch with them, and there became my long story with Sierra Club. So we will go into CECs. Here in California, in the US, when we're talking about water quality, we say constituents of emerging concern. For sewage, we say contaminants of emerging concern, but really they are CECs. That's just to differentiate between whether we're discussing water quality or we're discussing sewage. And so CECs encompass any physical, chemical, biological, and radiological substance or matter in any environmental media that may pose a risk to human and or ecological health, for which there is not currently published enforceable California or federal environmental or health standards. And here by federal, what we mean is the whole of the US, the wider US umbrella. That would be our federal government. So, the people that are in power in Congress with the president and the Senate and the House. CECs include a wide variety of constituents, PFAS, pharmaceuticals, and we say pharmaceuticals because people tend to dispose of pharmaceuticals down their toilets. They flush it thinking it's not, let's flush it down the toilet. It's gone. We do not know where they think it ends up somewhere where it will not cause harm or in the garbage. Personal care products, which have microbeads, flame retardants. So, you have your sofas and things that you purchase. The flame retardants actually have PFAS in them, disinfection byproducts, certain pesticides, microplastics, nanomaterials, and biological agents. And biological agents, we mean like antibiotic resistant bacteria, viruses that are both human and animal, algal toxins. I'm not sure if the Caribbean has a lot of algal blooms, but I can assure you it definitely occurs a lot here in California in water bodies, and parasites and protozoa and any other emerging pathogens would be a CEC under biological standards. So where are they found? CECs can be found in groundwater, surface water, drinking water, soil, sediment, dust, air, food, and of course, microbiota. How does it occur in surface water? Well, number one, you have everyday use of products, whether it's personal care products, cosmetics, soaps, detergents, stormwater runoff. Example, tire dust. A lot of people don't think about tire dust. Motor oil, which, is petroleum based, where we get plastics. Plastics are petroleum based. Plastics and styrofoam, those eating containers that are just discarded. When they break down into CECs and microplastics. Agriculture runoff, pesticides, fertilizers, septic tank discharge and wastewater effluent, example, pharmaceuticals, like I said before, that people flush down the toilet. Microplastics. And I know you will get this later, and there are links in the presentation. So if you want to read more, you can click on a link within the presentation. So NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, defines microplastics as small plastic debris about the size of a grain of rice or a sesame seed. Microplastics form when plastics such as grocery bags, plastic bottles break down into smaller pieces, and they can range in size from 0.0001 millimeter to 1 millimeter. I hope this video will play. Let's see if I can move this bar. But this really is a video of where microplastics are. So let's see the proliferation of microplastics. And hopefully everyone is able to see that. If you view this map you can see that there is a heavy proliferation in the Caribbean and along the East Coast, going all into the Caribbean. And so that's a really huge issue. And so this map actually is from the National Center for Environmental Information, and you can get it from the NOAA database as well if you want to access it. So major causes of microplastics in water supplies, like we said before, single-use plastic bags, single-use plastic bottles, single-use plastic straws, plastic fibers in clothing, because a lot of clothing are made from synthetic fibers, cosmetics, which you have your microbeads, and of course, tires. Most people don't think of tires, but tires, again, are petroleum based. So anything that's petroleum based will break down into a microplastic. So source pollution. So as tires roll and they break on the roads, the friction wears them down, releasing microplastic and rubber particles into the air. And of course, when rain falls, we get stormwater runoff that runs into the drains, into waterways, so your rivers, your streams, and of course into the ocean, releasing a chemical 6-ppd, which is toxic to marine life. 6-ppd is an additive used to prevent tire degradation, and when exposed to ozone in the air, it transforms into 6-ppd quinone, which is biologically toxic to marine life and other animals. Synthetic fibers, of course, when you watch synthetic textiles like polyester, nylon, and acrylic, it sheds thousands of microscopic plastic fibers into the environment through waterways and the ocean. So of course, you put these things in your washing machine, and here, most places, the water from the washing machine actually goes into um, the sewer. And of course, here you have a huge sanitation, recycling facilities that treat water up to secondary or tertiary, depending on what the reuse will be. Sometimes that reuse, once it's treated, may be released into the ocean. Sometimes, depending on the treatment level, it is sent into a spreading ground to replenish an aquifer. And so there are different uses, or it could be used as a seawater barrier for seawater intrusion if there is a coastal aquifer that's being depleted or has been depleted. And so when you think about all this recycled water, and the fibers, these microplastics are in recycled water, and they do show up. And if you're in the Caribbean and you have a sewer, when that sewage is cleared from your sewer, where is it going? So these are all the ways that it actually does end up into the atmosphere. And of course, if you're just releasing the water from your washing machine into your yard, maybe trying to use the water to water your plants, for example, then it's getting into the soil, it rains, and again, that rain, it goes down into the ocean. And of course, cosmetics, some beauty products contain manufactured plastic microbeads used for exfoliation or in glitter, which easily pass through wastewater treatment systems and the environment. And so I can tell you, with the cosmetics, this was something that we looked at here in California, and federally, and President Obama actually outlawed the use of microbeads in cosmetics here in the US. And so, one of the alternatives we like to tell people, if you're making, handmade soap, for example, use coffee beans. You can reuse your coffee beans. You make coffee, um, you use the beans, wash those beans out, and you can reuse it in your soap, for example. So these are ways where you do have alternatives that can be used. And of course, there are always things like sand, but now you get so many microbeads in sand, as you get microplastics in sand as well. So really, coffee beans would be the preferred alternative. Another pollution source is noodles. So noodles are the plastic pellets used by factories to manufacture plastic goods. They often spill during shipping, or production and enter the waterways. These pellets can sink or float depending on their density, and they commonly break down into even smaller microplastics and nanoplastics, making them invisible to the naked eye and infinitely more difficult to track. And so I know, like in St. Lucia, we have a plastic bag factory. So it's really easy for you to actually go and see what those pellets look like and see how they make the plastic bags. And of course, packaging. Everyday plastics like bags, food containers, and wrappers degrade over time in landfills and oceans, fragmenting into smaller particles. So when we think of that plastic wrap they put over our food, like you buy sweet peppers, for example, it's on a styrofoam container and then it's wrapped in plastic. All of that is going to degrade into microplastics at some point. And microplastics is in our food chain and they're finding it in babies. So when it degrades and it ends up in the ocean, microbes colonize those plastic fragments. And of course, then you have the zooplankton that eat those colonized microplastics and whatever it's there that ends up in the ocean. Then the fish consumes microplastics and zooplankton. You have our shellfish that are eating those microbes and microplastics. And we humans now are consuming that seafood. We're consuming the fish with all the microplastics and nanoplastics. And I wanted to share this slide because this really is a great slide that shows you fish that they found in Sri Lanka with nurdles in the mouth. This to me represents the impact microplastics are having on our food chain. And, I want to add that turtles as well, when a turtle sees a nylon bag floating in the ocean, they think it's a jellyfish. And so turtles are also consuming plastic bags. Another reason for us to really take a hard look at how much plastic that we're using, even before it becomes a microplastic or a nanoplastic. Plastic bottles. So this is new research I was looking at, and I thought it would be great to share it, as particularly with this graphic, with how the plastic bottles break down. New research finds that people who drink water from plastic bottles on a daily basis ingest far more microplastics than those who don't, up to 90,000 more particles a year. So just think about it. And you're getting microplastics every time you open that bottle, that plastic bottle, it's shedding microplastics. The bottles themselves are releasing microplastics due to sunlight and temperature change and physical manipulation. Sometimes you have it's crinkling because it's a one-use plastic bottle, you're squeezing it. All of that contributes to the release of microplastics. And microplastics can enter the bloodstream and reach vital organs, causing inflammation. Nanoplastics are invisible to the naked eye, and they act like natural hormones binding to cell receptors and tricking the body into responding inappropriately. So here are some of the health hazards of bottled water. The inflammatory response exposes cells to oxidative stress, which can lead to hormone system disturbances, impaired reproductive function, and damage to the nervous system. Chemical leaching can occur as well. Standard single-use bottles or PET do not typically contain BPA, but they can leach antimony, especially when exposed to prolonged heat or sunlight. Bisphenol A or BPA is an endocrine disruptor that mimics estrogen and can cause development and reproductive issues. Phthalates are linked to hormonal imbalances and decreased male fertility, including cancers. And, when we purchase a bottle of water, we never think about how long was this water in the sun? Was it in a refrigerated truck? Where is it being stored? So by the time it gets to us as a human being, it has already released so many microplastics into that water that we are then ingesting. This quote is from plasticpollutioncoalition.org. And basically, it says over the past several years, scientists have detected the presence of tiny plastic particles all throughout people's bodies, including in our hearts, bloodstreams, veins, lungs, placentas, feces, testes, and semen, breast milk, and brains, with more worrying research now on the way. Observations of wild animals in nature show us that interactions with plastic particles can be lethal, especially nanoplastics, which are so small they can travel from animals' bloodstreams into their brains, other organs and tissues, and living cells. Children and pregnant people are especially vulnerable to the effects of plastics. And you can go on their website for more information. That's plasticpollutioncoalition.org. Regulations. So, here in the United States, and I'm sure the Caribbean, plastic bottles are not regulated. And recently, bottled water is now regulated in the US. It wasn't for a very long time, but because of a lot of lobbying and pushes and looking at the health impacts, now bottled water is now regulated by the federal government and, of course, local states by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency in the US. Although plastic bottles are not regulated, they have a direct impact on our health. Like I just said, governments around the world are working on legislation to limit plastic waste. However, regulations are limited to items such as plastic bags, straws, and packaging materials. Plastic pollution is not only an environmental issue, but also a public health challenge. Access to safe drinking water for everyone is one of the basic human rights. But in the long run, a sustainable water supply that does not depend on plastic bottles is needed. And we're not saying that there isn't a place for plastic bottles because when you have I'm sorry, guys, that's my cell phone going off. When you have a hurricane, there is an emergency, you will require a bottled water. However, it should not be the first thing that everyone turns to. How can we personally take action? Public education is key. Return to some of the old ways. I grew up in the Caribbean. We used to use glass bottles and containers, recycle cookie containers and um, baskets, and we used woven straw baskets for going to the market. And we really have to go back to doing some of those things to reduce the amount of plastic waste. Keep plastic water bottles out of the sun. Use a filtration system at home. Replace single-use plastic bags with reusable or paper alternatives. Replace single-use plastic cups, straws, and silverware with sustainable solutions like bamboo, paper, or reusable options. And so, one of the things I always do, you go somewhere and you buy juice and they give it to you in a plastic container. I always say to them, I don't need the straw because we really don't need the straw. Or you can use a recyclable silicone straw or stainless steel straw. because straws are really an issue and there is no recycling straws whatsoever. Eliminate single-use bottled water and sports drinks and use a refillable bottle instead. Look for items with minimal plastic packaging. Purchase clothing made with natural fibers. Microplastic monitoring. I always say I'm so happy I live in California because there are lots of things we are the first to do. And microplastic monitoring in drinking water, we are the first in the world to require microplastic testing for drinking water. This testing plan represents an attempt to better understand how much microplastics are in drinking water, and it consists of 2 stages over 4 years. We are just completing the first stage, and I will be looking forward to seeing that report. And the first stage focuses on a large community of water systems, providing water to over 100,000 people. And the State Water Board is the one that is monitoring this and doing this study, and they will include geospatial representation, meaning they want representation from different corners of the state, all over the state, treatment capabilities, and the source of the water. Is it surface water, groundwater under direct influence of surface water? And the second stage is due to begin in the fall of 2026. And so I look forward to reading that report and sending it to Mr. Zhe, so hopefully he can send it out to everyone, because really it is a learning curve for us to learn how to deal with microplastics monitoring. They did release a policy handbook. It was adopted by the State Water Board, and there are standard operating procedures for extraction and measurement by infrared spectroscopy of microplastic particles in drinking water. And I provided a link for anyone who's interested that they can read that policy themselves and maybe see if you can implement it where you live. And so that's the end of my presentation. I wanted to leave you with this slide, though, to show you how prevalent plastics are, if you don't know. This is actually the carcass of a seabird. And if you look very carefully, you can see the amount of plastics this bird has ingested. This is in the stomach of a bird. And so that just tells you the proliferation, how bad it is, and how much it is affecting the environment, not just humans, but also animals. And so I really wanted to leave you with this picture so you can see that this is something we really have to deal with, not just for us humans, but for other people as well. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you for taking us through this journey quite efficiently, and I would invite questions from the floor. I think we have quite a number of people have turned up this afternoon, notwithstanding what's going on in another scene. So please feel free. I haven't seen anything in the chat just yet.
Hi, good
Go ahead.
afternoon.
Yes, Timothy, go ahead.
Timothy Augustus here, Trinidad and Tobago, professional operator here, wastewater. But this is so interesting. In fact, I'm scared because I didn't know this. Even drinking water bottles, we didn't really think about that. We know about leaving it in a vehicle and, the heat of the sun causing it to leach. But even without that, you could have issues because in transit, a lot of these commercial bottles are in the hot sun and for hours in traffic. So we do have a serious issue. In terms of, I think I heard you mention would filters and so on at your home be of a great assistance, to kind of reduce this kind of thing?
Yes, I did. And there are many companies that actually offer filters, and you can get some of that information in the links, but I'm happy to send other information to Mr. Zhe so that he can disseminate it. And big up to TNT. I love Trinidad and Tobago. And so I just want to say you should be scared. We should all be scared because this is something that we like you said, you pick up a bottle of water and you don't really think about the impact it is having. Or we use a plastic bag and we put it in the trash and we're not thinking about the impact that we're having on the natural environment and on ourselves. So it is something to definitely give thought to.
Thank you.
Yes, Stefan, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. It's well needed. Just wanted to know, have you ever seen any I guess risk from PVC or any from piping?
Absolutely, because PVC is a plastic. Actually, I did not put it into the presentation, but PVC is actually one of the ways that microplastics actually get into drinking water. I just thought I was going to scare everyone enough. I didn't want to put PVC into it because I know in the Caribbean we've turned, we're not using steel pipes and we use more PVC pipes now to distribute water. But yes, it is an issue as well.
I mean, just thinking about what I would do, whenever new pipes are laid, any of the off cuttings that might appear inside it, we get rid of that through the commissioning process by the flushing. But I think over time, as the system gets older, you have more higher instance of degradation on the inside, isn't it?
Correct.
All right, it's just something that I was thinking of, mainly because I work around that all day. And just one last thing I'd like from you, if you could post the link for the infrared spectroscopy method for the analysis.
Absolutely. It's in the presentation, but yes, I will post the link. All the links in the presentation, and I did send the slides to Mr. Jha,
Yeah,
so that he could distribute the slides. But I will send all the links to him in an email so that he can also send that out.
yeah, we'll do that. Um, there's a question in the chat for you from Mark Lachlan. Can you give a costing range for the study you spoke of? And if the possible costs associated to implement testing for same at utility on a small scale?
So I will have to tell you, I actually do not know the cost, but I can find that out from the State Water Board staff, the drinking water staff. So that's something I can definitely do, and possible costs associated with implementing tests. I will do that as well. See what the possible costs are. I do think because that they're doing it, I know 100,000 people may look like it's a large scale to all of you, but I live in the city of Los Angeles and we have 4 million people. So I just want to say 100,000 people is a very small scale. California itself has like, almost 10 million people. So, and I'm sure cost has something to do with that. So I am going to definitely take a look at the cost and let you know. And any other piece of information you guys may want, because I do have access to the information, please, if you put it in the chat or send Mr. Jha an email, I'm happy to find that information for you.
We have a comment here from Karen Martinez. He says, I read somewhere that people have about one credit card worth of plastic in their brain accumulating.
Well,
So,
I haven't read that yet, but it's definitely a comment I will look into because that wouldn't surprise me one little bit.
yeah. Any others? Please. I know the debate has been going on about the PFAS in water and how do utilities and I think the EPA in the US, placing some very high demands and the kind of standards you have to meet to be able to detect and meet compliance. And so that is becoming increasingly a big challenge. And I think for us in these spots, I don't know how much we would be able to mitigate a lot of these impacts initially, but it will be a while yet. And the impact on human health.
Yes, so I can tell you a little bit about PFAS, and I can tell you to mitigate PFAS is not as difficult as you think. It's one of the reasons I actually didn't really speak about it much here. I will tell you though that PFAS and the microplastics in combination, deadly. And science has proven that quite deadly. And you are getting a lot of PFAS and microplastics and nanoplastics that people are actually ingesting. In terms of mitigating PFAS, and the EPA actually did have very strident rules, but the occupier in chief has instructed the EPA to lessen those standards. So we are all waiting to see what's going to happen and having lots of hearings and meetings on the matter. PFAS is relatively easy to treat depending on which PFAS compound that you're finding. So the first thing you need to do is test to see which PFAS or P4 compound that you're finding. A lot of the time, if you use activated charcoal and microfiltration, you can get PFAS out of your water. If you are using reverse osmosis, then, RO takes out everything. If you're using reverse osmosis and microfiltration, ultraviolet light, that removes PFAS. So it all depends on what P4 and PFAS compound is in your water. So that would be the first thing. But really and truly, it is much easier to treat than you think. And there are mobile units that actually travel to treat bodies of water. They just come with their trailer, put in a pump, and pump out nice, clean water for you. So it's not as difficult as you think.
Okay. Well, that's good news for all of us. Okay. Any other questions? Our guest has to catch up with another engagement, and she has really taken time off to be with us today. And we really do appreciate to have our Caribbean lady out of California reaching out to us. And I'm sure this will not be the last time. We certainly are going to reach out again, given all the other things that you do in the West, which can be relevant to us here. So we will be keeping in touch. And thank you so much for joining us, Charming. And you have a wonderful rest of the day. And to those who are watching the big game, the return of the battle between Argentina and England, I don't know if the hot hand of God will work today. So, so let's see.
Go Jude Bellingham. That's what I got to say. Go Jude.
Okay, then. Have a good one, everybody. I'm Ignatius Jha, Executive Director at CAWASA, signing off on this is our webinar number 17 of 2025. See you again soon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.